All right, so in a song, Johnny Cash once said, "I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die." But does that make it true? Recently, prosecutors cited the lyrics of rappers Young Thug and Gunna when they charged them with gang and racketeering activity, a tactic that's been used against black artists before. Now, a new bill proposed in Congress aims to protect artists' creative expression from being used as criminal evidence. So joining me now is the man who co-sponsored that bill, Congressman Jamal Bowman. He's the co-sponsor of the RAP Act. And here with me on set is MSNBC legal analyst and civil rights attorney Charles Coleman Jr. He has a new podcast launching this fall, so stay tuned for that. All right, Congressman, I want to start with you. First, tell our viewers why you and Congressman Hank Johnson of Georgia, your fellow co-sponsor of this bill, why did you guys feel it was necessary to introduce this legislation on Capitol Hill at this moment?
Because hip hop is free speech. You know, rap is free speech. Rap is poetry. It's literature. It's drama. It's storytelling. And it should not be criminalized. You know, I remember back in the day when the 2 Live Crew was under attack, when
Yes.
Ice-T was under attack, when NWA was under attack. And it seems like when we look at criminal cases, hip hop artists continue to be targeted. Hundreds of cases over the last several years have targeted the lyrics of hip hop artists. And we do not see the same thing with regard to other genres of music. And thank you for using the Johnny Cash example. There's a Fred Mercury example. There's a Marilyn Manson example. There's so many examples, and those aren't used. If you have hard evidence against someone and you want to indict them, try them, and convict them with your hard evidence, that's fine. But do not choke the life out of rappers and go after their free speech. That is unacceptable.
I have to agree with you. And Charles, I think the congressman makes a good point. All of us grew up on the wings of hip hop. And, you know, it has such credo in our community because it's a reflection of our life and what we see. It's not all gangster rap. You know, there are, you know, plenty of the Will Smiths of the artists out there as well. But I'm curious, if this legislation does pass, how will that impact what's happening in the criminal justice system? Because I believe this legislation is focused on at the federal level.
Right. Well, I think, Tiffany, is going to serve as a model for other states to actually enact legislation that mirrors what we're seeing on the federal level. We've already seen in New York, where I'm from and where Congressman Bowman is from, laws that actually go on the books and protect people from being prosecuted because of their lyrics. And I think that, having read the legislation, I actually can support it. I think it's a very complicated conversation and a difficult matrix.
You say you can or cannot?
I can.
You can, yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
We've talked before about the importance of cultural nuance and how that plays into, as a former prosecutor, people who may not necessarily understand music, language, lexicon, how it's used in practice. But it's important for people to understand that as a prosecutor, you do want to have tools available to you. The one thing that I think this legislation does very, very well is that it specifies, as the New York legislation does, if it's not in support of something that's literally at issue at the trial, it cannot be used.
Yeah.
So it's important to understand that, because if you're talking about communities where gun violence and violence against us is up across America, if you're talking about supporting victims' families, there should be tools that you are able to use to prosecute individuals in these situations. However, the lyrics that they've rapped about 20 years ago, saying I'm a gun-toting whatever it is that I am, should not be used for just indiscriminately against them. So I do think that this strikes the appropriate balance in between those two things.
Yeah, I think the point you make about cultural competency is such an important one. I mean, you think about just in our lexicon as a community, you know, if we're like, hey, let's get on this spades table, I'm gonna murder this dude on the spades table tonight. If you overhear that and you don't have the cultural competency, you know, outside in our community, then sure, you will misunderstand what people are saying. Congressman, I'm curious though, look, there's a lot of gridlock on Capitol Hill. Can this pass the House? And then, even if it passes the House, can it pass the Senate?
So we need all hip hop artists, anyone who works in the industry, and any fans of hip hop to contact your member of Congress right now, and continue to contact them so that they sponsor this piece of legislation and so the legislation can move forward in the House. And also contact your senators to support this legislation so that it can move forward in the Senate. This is a perfect opportunity for the hip hop community to rise up, say enough is enough, and become politically engaged and leverage their political power. Because as we all know, things don't move in Congress unless there's pressure. pressure bust pipes. So let's apply the pressure to my colleagues so that they can support this piece of legislation. Look, at the end of the day, the first amendment to the Constitution is freedom of speech. Without freedom of speech, you do not have a constitution and you do not have a democracy. Republicans can get on board with this just as well as Democrats. And thank you for mentioning the New York bill. Shout out to my brother, Senator Jamal Bailey, and my sister, Senator Carmelita Cruz, for their leadership in this passing the Senate in New York. And now we need the Assembly to do its work as well.
Yeah. And, I think it's a really good point you make. And in Georgia, in my neck of the woods, there's a music festival that happens that just pulled out of Atlanta because the Republican governor there, they did not want guns allowed. And the Republican governor there, Brian Kemp, expert in voter suppression, refused to not have that. So I just wonder, if you're so concerned about violence, look at your side, because they are disproportionately armed. If you're so concerned about violence, do something about gun control and mass shooters. Most of them do not look like the people on this screen, and they're certainly not rap artists. So I hope that this legislation passes. Charles, before we go, tell us how the criminal justice system specifically targets Black creativity, because I think that is the biggest point here. Right. The congressman did a good job of explaining that, but I think there's still a level, a layer of attack that happens to us. We're over-policed, even if it's not through the legal system. We're over-policed in our tone, our expression, what we write, what we say, in every capacity, from cable news to the music industry.
So we understand that literally from the point of childhood, we are characterized in a very different way than many of our peers. And what ends up happening in the criminal justice system is that characterization is doubled down on and played upon in such a way that it makes it easy for you to present a criminal picture, a criminal sort of idea or motif of someone who's on the stand as a defendant or someone who is sitting as a defendant. And that's why it's so important. Representative Bowman used the term criminalization of hip hop, right? So the notion of just rappers being thugs, rappers being criminals, the criminality of what sometimes can be thematically in music in terms of just telling our story, telling our narrative, being a part of what it is to be a storyteller is oftentimes perverted in such a way that makes us look guilty in ways that we are not. And it's an easy jump for jurors because that process has begun far earlier than it did when they stepped into that courtroom.